I was halfway through writing Sophie's obituary when I realized I didn't know her favorite color. This felt like an important detail. The Galactic Bereavement Standard Form 7C specifically requests personal touches to honor the deceased, and I had nothing. Junior Cargo Loader, human, 26 standard cycles. Probably had a favorite color. Probably had dreams, aspirations, a family somewhere who would receive my carefully worded notification that their offspring had been liquefied by apex predators because someone, and I would find out who, had locked her in holding bay 7 Gamma. My scales flickered between yellow and a shade of panic I didn't have a name for. "Sir?" Officer Krell's voice crackled through my communicator. "The screaming hasn't started yet." I checked the timestamp on my display. 4 minutes since containment lockdown. 4 minutes since the heavy Durasteel doors had sealed Sophie inside with Scrath, Vin, and Toric, 3 Vorrax apex predators whose species had earned the galactic nickname, the reason insurance premiums exist. 4 minutes was unusual. Vorrax typically began feeding within 90 seconds of detecting prey. I knew this because I had memorized their behavioral profile after the incident of Cycle 847, which had required 17 body bags and a station-wide therapy mandate. The profile was very specific. 90 seconds, sometimes less if the prey showed fear. Humans always showed fear. "Maybe she passed out," suggested Officer Threll, who was manning the secondary monitoring station. His amphibious skin had gone from its usual teal to a concerning shade of gray. Shock response. "Prey animals do that sometimes. Go limp. Makes them easier to—" "Thank you, Threll." I cut him off before he could finish that sentence. "That's very helpful." My tail ridges were pulsing so fast they'd started humming. The soft blue emergency lighting of the security monitoring hub cast everything in hues that made the situation feel appropriately funereal. Data pads lay scattered across my desk. Incident reports. Liability waivers. The half-finished Form 7C. I'd already filled in the date and cause of death. Predator-related consumption seemed appropriately vague while remaining legally accurate. "Should I fetch the ceremonial mop?" asked Officer Vrell from the doorway. She was holding a clipboard with what I recognized as the biohazard cleanup request form, already filled out, just waiting for a signature. "The ceremonial mop is for after," I said. "We haven't confirmed termination yet." Right. She made a note on her clipboard. "I'll put it on standby." This was the part of my job they didn't warn you about at the academy. The waiting, the administrative preparation for tragedy. I'd written 6 obituaries this cycle alone. 4 for officers who'd made poor decisions involving airlocks, 1 for a maintenance worker who'd insulted a Threlbian ambassador, and 1 for a cleaning drone that had achieved unexpected sentience and then immediately driven itself into the reactor core. The drone's obituary had been the most emotionally difficult. It had only wanted to understand love. I pulled up the security feed for holding base 7 Gamma and felt all 6 of my compound eyes attempt to blink independently. Sophie was sitting cross-legged on the floor. The Vorrax were arranged around her in a loose semicircle. Scrath, the Alpha, had his massive obsidian-furred body positioned directly in front of her. His burning orange eyes, capable of tracking prey through 17 different light spectrums, were fixed on her face. His serrated teeth, each one longer than my fingers, were fully visible. Because his mouth was open. Because Sophie was scratching under his chin. "Sir?" Krell's voice had gone very quiet. "Are you seeing this?" I was seeing it. And my crystalline scales were cycling through colors I hadn't produced since puberty. Blue to yellow to a sort of confused magenta that I'd have to look up in the emotional reference guide later. "She's touching the Alpha," Threll whispered. "She's touching the Alpha, and she still has arms." On the feed, Sophie shifted her position. Scrath made a sound. The microphones in holding base 7 Gamma picked it up clearly, and I watched the audio waveform spike on my display. The Vorrax Alpha was purring, not growling, not the subsonic death rumble that Vorrax produced before disemboweling their victims. An actual purr. The kind of sound that small, domesticated creatures made when content. The kind of sound that a species capable of hunting starships for sport should not be anatomically capable of producing. "That's not in the behavioral profile," I said. "Maybe the behavioral profile is wrong," Vrell offered. The behavioral profile is based on 400 cycles of documented Vorrax predation events. My voice came out flatter than intended. It is not wrong. Then explain why Vin is on her back. I looked at the, secondary feed. Officer Vrel was correct. Vin, the pack's second, the Vorrax with a jagged scar across her snout from a fight that had killed 11 people and destroyed a small moon, was lying on her back. Her legs were twitching, her barbed tail was wagging. Sophie was rubbing her belly. I made a sound. It might have been a chime of confusion. It might have been my sanity exiting through my vocal apparatus. The distinction felt unimportant. "Torx asleep," Threll reported, his voice hollow. "The young one. He's asleep on her feet. His pupils are fully dilated. That's the docile response. The prey is not food response." Why is he displaying the prey is not food response? I didn't have an answer. The station around us hummed with its usual background noise. Life support cycling, distant engines, the soft murmur of beings going about their lives completely unaware that everything we understood about apex predator biology was being dismantled by a human woman in cargo coveralls. Should I? Vrel looked down at her clipboard, then back at the feed. Should I cancel the biohazard request? No. I straightened in my chair, forcing my scales toward something resembling professional blue. This could still go wrong. Vorrax are unpredictable. One wrong move and she's... Sophie sneezed. All three Vorrax heads snapped toward her simultaneously. Scrath's fur bristled along his spine. Vin rolled onto her feet with the fluid grace of a born killer. Torx's eyes flew open, orange and burning, and very, very alert. I stopped breathing. Crystalline beings don't technically need to breathe, but we do it anyway for atmospheric processing. I stopped processing atmosphere entirely. Sophie wiped her nose with her sleeve. "Sorry," she said to the predators surrounding her. "Dusty in here." Scrath's fur slowly flattened. His pupils, which had contracted to vertical slits, gradually expanded back to circles. He made a low rumbling sound and pressed his massive head against Sophie's shoulder. She patted his snout. "You're fine, Mr. Grumpy. False alarm." "Mr. Grumpy," Threll repeated. "She named the Alpha. She named the apex predator that once ate a battalion commander during a peace negotiation. She named him Mr. Grumpy." "To be fair," Krell said slowly, "he does look grumpy." "He's a Vorrax. They all look grumpy. It's their default expression because their facial muscles evolved for tearing flesh, not conveying emotional nuance." I held up a hand for silence. My mind was racing through possibilities, trying to find an explanation that fit within established scientific parameters. Humans were not apex predators. They were soft, squishy, moderately intelligent mammals with no natural weapons and a concerning tendency to trip over their own feet. They should not be able to pacify a Vorrax pack through physical affection. Unless... "Pull up the human behavioral database," I ordered. "Cross-reference with pack predator socialization patterns." Threll's webbed. Fingers flew across his console. "Searching. Sir, there's a file here. It's marked, 'Do not read before sleep.'" "Open it." The display flickered. Text appeared. I read the first paragraph, and my scales went completely white. "Pack bonding," I said quietly. "They pack bond with everything. It's a documented human phenomenon. They form familial attachments with any creature that displays even minimal positive response to their presence. There are recorded instances of humans pack bonding with rocks." "Rocks don't have teeth," Vrel pointed out. "The rocks were sedimentary. They were eventually given names and placed in positions of honor in human dwellings." I turned back to the feed. "She's not afraid of them. That's the key. She's not producing fear pheromones, so the Vorrax aren't registering her as prey. They're registering her as... As what?" I watched Sophie gently scratch behind Torx's oversized ears. The young Vorrax's barbed tail was thumping against the Durasteel floor with enough force to dent it. As a very confident, very affectionate packmate. The silence in the monitoring hub was absolute. Somewhere in the distance, a maintenance alert chimed. Someone coughed. The universe continued existing, despite the fact that nothing made sense anymore. "I need to update the betting pool," Krell said finally. I turned. "The what?" "The betting pool. For time until screaming. Currently at 3,000 credits in the pot." He had the decency to look slightly ashamed. Everyone bet under 5 minutes. Officer Grelch bet on instant death. He's going to be very upset. You started a betting pool on a crew member's death? It's traditional, sir, for Vorrax situations. Helps with morale. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to reprimand him for the callousness, the inappropriate gambling, the complete lack of professional decorum. But my scales were still white, my tail ridges were still humming, and on the security feed, Sophie had somehow convinced Scrath to lie down so she could use his massive, murder-capable body as a backrest. Fine, I said. Who had survives indefinitely through inexplicable pack bonding? No one, sir. That wasn't an option. Add it. Put me down for 50 credits. Sir, you can't bet on outcomes you're actively monitoring. That's Officer Krell. Yes, sir? The human is currently teaching an apex predator to shake hands. I am going to need something to believe in. And right now, gambling is all I have. On the feed, Torek had extended one massive paw toward Sophie. She grasped it with her small, fragile human fingers and moved it up and down. Good boy, she said. Who's a good murder puppy? You are. Yes, you are. Torek's tail wagging intensified. The floor denting became more pronounced. I'll add the option, Krell said weakly. I turned back to my desk, staring at the half-finished obituary. Sophie's name was at the top, followed by the date, followed by predator-related. Consumption. I picked up my stylus and slowly, deliberately drew a line through the cause of death. I left the rest blank. Something told me I was going to need a new form entirely. Sir? Vrel was pointing at the main display. She's looking at the camera. I looked up. Sophie had turned to face the security lens directly. Her expression was cheerful, unconcerned. The expression of someone who had not, apparently, processed the fact that she was surrounded by creatures that could disembowel a starship hull. She waved. Then she mouthed something, slowly and clearly, so the lip-reading software could pick it up. Text appeared on my screen. Hey, can someone bring snacks? Torek's hungry, and he gets cranky. Behind her, Torek yawned. His mouth opened wide enough to fit my entire torso inside. Rows of serrated teeth gleamed under the harsh white lighting of the holding bay. Sophie reached back and patted his snout without looking. Don't worry, buddy. I'm sure they have something. My communicator chimed. Commissioner Yeltrix's frequency. Her voice came through already stressed, already moist, already on the edge of the bureaucratic breakdown that she experienced roughly 3 times per shift. Security Chief Rex Thorne, I've just received 17 incident reports, a liability waiver request, and a notification that our Vorrax containment has been breached by a human. Please tell me she's dead. I have the condolence letter templates ready. I've already selected the font. It's very tasteful. I looked at the feed. Sophie was now teaching Vin to high five. The scarred Vorrax was participating with disturbing enthusiasm. Commissioner, I said slowly, I think you should come to the monitoring hub. Is there a body? Tell me there's a body. I need there to be a body, Vorrax Thorne. The paperwork for survival is much more complicated than the paperwork for death. There are forms, interviews, psychological evaluations. Do you know how many psychological evaluations I've had to process this cycle? My stress glands can't. Commissioner? What? There is no body. I watched Sophie boop Scrath on the nose. The alpha's tail wagged once. Just once. But it wagged. There may never be a body. I think we have a situation. The line went silent for 3 full seconds. I'm on my way. Don't let anyone die before I get there. The overtime forms for unexpected survival are on the 4th floor, and the lift is broken. The connection cut. I sat back in my chair, watched the human woman cuddle apex predators like they were oversized domestic pets, and wondered if the station's therapy mandate covered whatever I was about to experience. My scales had settled on a color I could only describe as existential uncertainty. It suited my mood perfectly. Commissioner Yeltrix arrived 17 minutes later, already leaving a trail of stress mucus on the corridor floor. I could smell her before I saw her, that distinctive amphibian anxiety secretion that maintenance had learned to pre-treat with absorbent powder. Her 4 pale blue eyes were blinking completely out of sync, a sure sign that her nervous system had abandoned any pretense of coordination. She clutched a stack of data cards in her webbed fingers. each one representing a different form of bureaucratic nightmare. "Show me," she said, dabbing her face with a cloth that was already saturated. "Show me what impossible thing has happened now." I gestured toward the main display. Yeltrix looked. Her skin, which had been merely damp, began actively dripping. "She's alive." "Yes, Commissioner." "She's alive and she's—" "Is that Scrath? The Scrath? The one from the Theta 9 massacre?" "He prefers Mr. Grumpy now, apparently." Yeltrix made a sound like a balloon deflating through a wet sponge. She sank into the nearest chair, which squeaked in protest as moisture seeped into its cushioning. The stress-dampening plants in the monitoring hub, which we'd installed after the incident of Cycle 847, began visibly wilting. "How long has she been in there?" 23 minutes. 23 minutes with 3 apex predators and she's not even injured? She has a small scratch on her forearm. I pulled up the relevant footage. She got it from Torx Enthusiasm during the handshake training. She described it as just a love nibble and applied a small adhesive bandage from her pocket. She brought bandages into a predator containment cell? Humans apparently carry medical supplies at all times. It's a species trait. They expect to be injured regularly and plan accordingly. Yeltrix's eyes blinked. Top left, bottom right, top right, bottom left, in a pattern that suggested her brain was attempting to reboot. "This can't be happening. The liability alone, the insurance claims. Do you know what our premiums are going to look like after this? The underwriters already hate us. They have a special department just for our station. It's called the Why Do We Keep Insuring These People department. To be fair, Commissioner, no one has died." "That's worse." She threw her webbed hands up, scattering data cards across the floor. "Death has forms. Death has procedures. Death has a clear chain of documentation that ends with a memorial plaque and a modest severance package to next of kin. What form do I file for employee-befriended apex predators through aggressive cuddling? What box do I check for Vorrax pack now considers cargo loader to beaten mother?" I didn't have an answer. The Galactic Administrative Codex, which I had memorized during a particularly boring shore leave, contained no provisions for this scenario. On the display, Sophie had started braiding Vin's tail fur. The scarred Vorrax was lying perfectly still, allowing it, her orange eyes half closed in what I could only interpret as contentment. Scrath watched from nearby, his massive head resting on his paws, occasionally rumbling approval. Torek had fallen asleep again. This time with his head fully in Sophie's lap. "We need to extract her," Yeltrix said. "Open the doors. Get her out. Pretend this never happened." "There's a complication with that plan, Commissioner." "Of course there is. There's always a complication. What is it this time? Did the door mechanism fail? Did someone spill stimulant on the control panel again? Did the maintenance drone achieve sentience and lock us out of the system?" "The door mechanism is fine." I pulled up the behavioral analysis that Threll had been running. "The complication is that the Vorrax pack has imprinted on her. If we remove her from the holding bay, they will follow." "They can't follow. They're contained." "They were contained by doors designed to withstand normal Vorrax aggression." I highlighted the relevant section of Threll's report. "The doors were not designed to withstand Vorrax separation anxiety. According to these projections, if we remove Sophie without the pack's consent, Scrath will be through the Durasteel in approximately 4 minutes. Vin will assist. Torek will probably cry, which will make everything worse because his distress vocalizations can shatter reinforced glass." Yeltrix stared at me. Mucus dripped from her chin onto the data card in her lap. "You're telling me," she said slowly, "that we cannot remove the human from the predators because the predators will destroy our station to get her back." "That is correct." "You're telling me that our only option is to open the doors and hope the Vorrax behave." "Also correct. And if they don't behave, if they decide that everyone else on this station looks significantly more edible than the small human woman who has been giving them belly rubs?" I considered the question. It was a fair concern. The Vorrax were apex predators with a documented history of violence that spanned 17 star systems. Their species had once eaten an entire diplomatic envoy because someone had made eye contact at the wrong angle. The idea of Releasing them into the general station population was, objectively, insane. But, Commissioner, look at Scrath's posture. She looked. The Alpha Vorrax had shifted position, placing his body between Sophie and the cell door. His ears were oriented toward the security camera. His fur was slightly bristled, not in aggression, but in alertness, in protection. He's guarding her, Yeltrix said quietly. He's been guarding her for the past 8 minutes. Every time someone walks past the external corridor, his attention shifts. He's tracking potential threats. I zoomed in on Scrath's face. His pupils are fully dilated when he looks at Sophie, contracted to slits when he looks at the door. He's differentiated between pack and not pack. What does that mean for us? It means that if we're careful, if we approach correctly, the Vorrax may extend Sophie's protected status to anyone she considers friendly. I paused. It also means that if anyone threatens her, even accidentally, Scrath will remove their spine with his teeth. Wonderful, fantastic, this is fine. Yeltrix was dabbing her face so frantically that she'd worn a hole in her cloth. Open the doors, let's see what happens. What's the worst that could occur? Mass casualties? Station destruction? An insurance claim so large it achieves sentience and files a lawsuit against us? I nodded to Officer Krell, who had been waiting at the door controls with the expression of someone who had accepted his imminent demise. Opening Holding Bay 7 Gamma, he announced. May whatever deities we believe in have mercy on our various souls. The doors hissed. Mechanisms disengaged. Heavy durasteel panels slid apart with a grinding sound that echoed through the monitoring hub. Sophie looked up from her tail braiding. Oh, finally. Torek's been getting restless. I think he needs walkies. She stood, gently displacing the young Vorrax's head from her lap. Torek made a plaintive sound, a sort of whining growl that resonated in my chest plates, and immediately scrambled to his feet to follow her. Vin rose with fluid grace, shaking out her newly braided tail. The intricate patterns Sophie had woven into her fur glinted under the harsh lighting. Scrath moved last. The Alpha unfolded himself from the floor, all 7 feet of obsidian-furred killing machine, and padded to Sophie's side. His shoulder brushed against hers. His burning orange eyes swept the corridor beyond the door, evaluating, assessing, cataloging every potential threat. Then Sophie walked out of Holding Bay 7 Gamma. The Vorrax followed. They moved in formation, Scrath on her left, Vin on her right, Torek bounding ahead and then circling back like an oversized, extremely lethal puppy. Their claws clicked against the floor in a rhythm that matched Sophie's footsteps. Their tails swayed in sync. Officer Vrel, who had been waiting in the corridor with the ceremonial mop, dropped it. The mop clattered against the floor. The sound echoed. Scrath's head snapped toward Vrel. His lips peeled back from his serrated teeth. A growl built in his chest, low and subsonic, vibrating through the deck plating. Hey! Sophie's hand came up, resting on Scrath's flank. She's fine. She's just holding a stick. See? Harmless stick. The growl died. Scrath's fur flattened. He gave Vrel one last suspicious look, then dismissed her entirely, returning his attention to Sophie. Vrel remained frozen against the wall, not breathing as the pack passed. Sorry about him, Sophie called back cheerfully. He's protective. It's actually really sweet once you get used to it. I watched them approach on the security feeds, switching cameras as they moved through the station. Sophie walked with the casual confidence of someone taking a morning stroll. The 3 apex predators surrounding her walked with the focused intensity of a military escort. Crew members fled in every direction. Someone screamed. A maintenance cart was abandoned, mid-corridor. An officer dove into a supply closet and could be heard praying in 3 different languages. Sophie didn't seem to notice. Is the cafeteria this way? She asked, pointing down a junction corridor. I promised Torek snacks. Torek's tail wagged. The motion generated enough force to crack the wall panel behind him. Commissioner Yeltrix had joined me at the main display. Her entire body was dripping now, creating a small pond around her feet. The stress-dampening plants had given up entirely and were now just brown stalks. What do we do? She whispered. What do we possibly do with this situation? I thought about it. I thought about the forms, the protocols, the 17 different regulatory bodies that would need to be notified. I thought about the insurance claims, the liability waivers, the inevitable inquiry from Galactic Command. I thought about my obituary file, still open on my desk, Sophie's name still at the top. Then I thought about Scrath's pupils dilating when he looked at her, Vin's tail wagging during the braiding, Torek falling asleep in her lap like she was the safest place in the universe. We create a new position, I said slowly. Vorrax behavioral consultant, specialized role, unique qualifications. That's not a real position. It is now. On the display, Sophie had found the cafeteria. The kitchen staff had evacuated, leaving the serving area empty. She was currently rummaging through a cooling unit, while Scrath watched the doors. Vin inspected the tables for threats, and Torek pressed his nose against the glass display case with obvious longing. Found it! Sophie emerged holding a large container. Protein strips. The good kind. She turned to the pack. Okay, everybody sit. Scrath sat. Vin sat. Torek sat so hard he cracked the floor tile beneath him. Good babies. Sophie began distributing protein strips. Such good babies. Yes, you are. All three of you. Very good murder puppies. Commissioner Yeltrix made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been the final surrender of her sanity. The distinction felt unimportant. Vorrax behavioral consultant, she repeated. Fine. Create the position. File the paperwork. I don't care anymore. I'm going to go back to my office and sit in the dark until my stress glands stop producing. She squelched toward the door, leaving wet footprints behind her. I turned back to the display. Sophie had finished distributing snacks and was now sitting on the cafeteria floor, surrounded by 3 apex predators who were watching her, with expressions that could only be described as adoring. Good puppies, she said again, scratching under Scrath's chin. Very good puppies. We're going to be such good friends. The Alpha Vorrax purred. I closed the obituary file. I opened a new document. Position Creation Request Form. 12B, Vorrax Behavioral Consultant. In the qualifications section, I wrote, must be human, must be immune to fear, must be willing to provide unlimited belly rubs. It wasn't standard, it wasn't protocol, it wasn't anything the Galactic Administrative Codex had prepared me for. But then again, neither was Sophie. I submitted the form and hoped that whoever reviewed it would understand that sometimes the universe simply refused to make sense, and sometimes that was fine. 3 station cycles later, I stopped flinching every time Sophie walked past my office with her entourage. It became normal. That was the strangest part. The sight of a small human woman leading 3 apex predators through the corridors, stopping occasionally so Torek could sniff interesting panels, or Vin could receive her daily ear scratches from terrified crew members who had learned that participation was mandatory. Scrath never let Sophie out of his sight. He slept outside her quarters. He growled at anyone who raised their voice near her. He once pinned a visiting diplomat to a wall for 16 minutes because the diplomat had gestured too. Aggressively during a budget discussion, Sophie had apologized. The diplomat had requested a transfer. Our insurance premiums tripled, then quadrupled, then the underwriters simply stopped returning Commissioner Yeltrix's calls. The Why Do We Keep Insuring These People department reportedly disbanded entirely, citing psychological damage beyond compensation. But no one died. The Vorrax, it turned out, were excellent at security work when properly motivated, and Sophie's belly rubs were very motivating indeed. I updated my personal file with a new entry. Witnessed the impossible, survived. Recommend therapy. The therapist quit after meeting Torek. Some things simply defy administrative solutions,